This is ThatCrypto, and today we're having the meetup dedicated to Blockstack. And as of recently, I'm an evangelist, a Toronto evangelist for Blockstack. It means kind of talk about it. I'll be learning more about Blockstack functionality and be talking more about Blockstack in the future. And why I like the Blockstack philosophy? It's the company is building decentralized internet. And in comparison to Ethereum or Waves, for example, Ethereum and Waves, they want to keep everything, all the data on chain. That's why there's scalability problems. The Blockstack has a different philosophy. Only the identities and smart contract logics are kept on chain. Everything else, all the decentralized applications, and the user data is stored elsewhere. And actually that's user decides where to store the data. It can be a local hard drive, it can be a cloud, and so on. And today we have Ken Liao from the Blockstack, who will tell us more about what it is, what's the philosophy, and it's a short introductory presentation. Later on, we are planning to have a call with Patrick from the head office who's gonna tell us about the app mining, how you as a developer can get some of as of now, it's $200,000 a month. The developers are supported. And we're gonna talk about what you need to know, how you can do it, what are the rules of the game. And we also have a box of swag that I received yesterday from Blockstack, and this particular t-shirt. If you guys create a Blockstack ID today, you'll get a free t-shirt. Actually, good quality. And welcome, Ken.
Thank you. Hey everyone, my name is Ken. I'm an engineering partner at Blockstack. Today I'm going to give you an overview presentation of what Blockstack is, how it works, and why we're doing it. And then later on, my colleague Patrick will give you a presentation on app mining. Okay, before we start, how many people here don't know what Blockstack is and have no idea how it works? Yeah, a few? Okay. How many people here know what Blockstack is and is interested in building an app on Blockstack? Cool, okay. Very diverse audience. Okay, let's get started. Can everyone see the slides? Okay. Okay, so what is Blockstack? Blockstack is a decentralized computing platform, and also it is a movement to build a better internet where users' fundamental digital rights are protected. So why do we need something like this? These days, in the age of cloud computing, these large internet companies violate our digital rights. We're being tracked everywhere. Our private data is being sold to advertisers for profit, and there's massive data leaks every other day where your personal data is compromised. If you've been reading the news today, Capital One had a massive data leak today where 6 million Canadians had their personal data exposed, which includes things like your name, address, birthday, your SIN number, your income, your credit card balances, all that stuff, right? And we don't think that these big companies should have the ability to make these kind of mistakes and lead to this kind of massive data leak. If you know about Google, their tagline was, don't be evil. And we think that it should instead be, can't be evil. We don't think that any company should have the ability to decide or be powerful enough to decide whether or not they should be evil or not. So how does Blockstack work? The basis of Blockstack is the Stacks blockchain. And on top of the Stacks blockchain, we've built a self-sovereign identity system called Blockstack Naming System. And attached to that is the user-owned data storage, which we call Gaia. And additionally, we've recently released a preview of our smart contract language, which can be used on the Stacks blockchain. So to start, the Stacks blockchain is currently it's a level 2 blockchain on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. But we've created this new novel tunable proof consensus, which is a combination of proof of work and proof of burn. So what this is essentially when you start a new blockchain, there's very little hashing power. There's only a few people doing the mining. And as a result, it's very easy for somebody to have more than 51% of the hash power and be able to take over the blockchain. So with proof of burn, the miners will burn Bitcoin and receive Stacks tokens as a mining reward on the Stacks blockchain, which means that we're actually utilizing the hash power of the Bitcoin blockchain in order to bootstrap the Stacks blockchain. And this means that it's much, much harder for someone to gain over 51% of the network on the Stacks blockchain. So we've built the identity system and smart contract system on-chain. And our philosophy is that only the most critical components that need this sort of secure system will be on-chain. Everything else should be performed off-chain. This is in contrast to Ethereum's way of putting everything onto the chain and building a world computer. We don't think that's ultimately scalable when you have millions and millions of users. Evidently, last year, I believe, or 2 years ago, when CryptoKitties, if you all know CryptoKitties, when it first became popular, they basically congested the Ethereum blockchain, and you basically couldn't do anything else on the blockchain. So the identity system, which we built, we call it the BNS, Blockstack Naming System. We envisioned this as a decentralized replacement to DNS, so that in the future we could completely replace all the centralized components of the current internet protocol. So right now, it is implemented as a smart contract. So you can register domain names or usernames using Blockstack by sending a transaction and burning either Bitcoin or Stacks tokens. And once you register this name, you own this name, and nobody else, including Blockstack, the apps that you use, or anyone else, would have control over your identity. So as long as you own the private key, you have complete ownership and control over this name. So you can use this name to sign into all sorts of apps. Currently, just in our app mining program, which Blockstack is sponsoring, there are over 170 apps which you can use and log in with your Blockstack ID. So it works similarly to Google sign-in or Facebook login, except there's no third party that is in between you and the apps that you use. And attached to this identity system, we also have a decentralized storage system. So we've basically repurposed existing cloud storage like AWS, Google Cloud, Dropbox to act as your personal cloud storage bucket. And whenever you use an app on Blockstack, instead of your data being saved onto a server that this app owns or controls, your data is saved to wherever you specify. And everything is encrypted client-side. So nobody other than you or the people that you choose can see your data. And there is no possibility that a single company makes a mistake and millions of people will have their data exposed. So this is a diagram that kind of illustrates what it looks like.
Ken, to do we ask questions during or after the presentation?
Maybe after.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So this diagram is the world today where the app that you use, for example, Facebook, is sort of like the data broker in between you and the apps you use and other users. With Gaia, this is flipped. So you're your sole agent, and you can choose who you want to share this data with, and you give permission to apps to read whatever data that they're requesting. So for the average user, how do you use Blockstack? We have what we call a browser, the Blockstack browser, which you can easily create a Blockstack ID. It's a free ID that you can create, and you can use it to sign into different Blockstack apps. If you want to install it, just go to blockstack.org/install, and we'll try to do a demo after this. And if you're looking for what kind of apps are available right now, you can go to app.co, which is an aggregation of all the apps that have been built on Blockstack so far. So if you're a developer, Blockstack is very easy to start using. The main JavaScript library, Blockstack.js, is very simple to use. Blockstack apps are client-side only. So as a developer, you don't need to worry about building a server database backend. Where you don't have to worry about all the security issues that come with having a server. You don't need a smart contract or know how to build smart contracts to get started. Most Blockstack apps today don't use smart contracts, but it's there, and if you want to, you can certainly use it. There's also iOS and Android SDKs that we've built, so you can build native Blockstack mobile apps. Yeah, and everything is open source, so you could go on GitHub and audit the code, submit a pull request if you see something that you don't like, raise an issue. We are an open platform. So this is just a quick example of how easy it is to get started with Blockstack. This is a JavaScript, just a single line of code that invokes Blockstack sign-in. And this will redirect the user to the Blockstack browser, or if they have the native version installed, they can quickly grant permission and sign into the app that you've built. And basically after this, you also have access to a storage bucket for this user on your app. So you can write and read files to this bucket using the get file and put file commands. And you don't have to worry about where this data goes, and you don't have to worry about how much storage this user is using. And that's it for the overview. I guess, does anyone have questions before we do like a demo? So all the data that you store on Gaia is encrypted client-side, which means whatever cloud storage service you use, there's no way they can understand like what that data is. To them, it's just a bunch of gibberish, right? And Gaia is built so that you can use any storage driver. So the existing cloud solutions are just part of what you can use with Gaia. Anybody can build a storage driver for Gaia so that you could potentially use your own computer that's connected to the internet, although that's not recommended. You can use Dropbox, you can use all sorts of services. And the reason we did this is because cloud services have been in production for many, many years, and they have really good guarantees for availability, speed, and those things we shouldn't have to give up in order to get a little bit of privacy. Sorry, is that a question, or are you just okay?
If I may, so I'm pretty new to Blockstack. So I read about it and what I understood, the main principle. Maybe I kind of try to talk about it, and you can correct me if anything is wrong.
Yeah.
So the main design principles are that the authentication or IDs and the smart contracts they are on blockchain, and only identification and the smart contracts. Everything else is off-chain, so this is how the scalability problem is solved. All the user data is encrypted and stored elsewhere. The user decides where. So it solves a couple of problems. I will talk about it later. But in terms of scalability, you don't use the blockchain space to store your personal data. And in terms of development, that's the easy JavaScript API. So like more or less like everyone knows. What are the benefits for developers? First of all is authentication. IDs are stored on the blockchain, so you don't have to worry that your login and passwords of your users are leaked or hacked or stolen. So that's one less worry for the developers. Data storage is elsewhere. You don't have to worry about data storage, about scaling your data centers or renting more from AWS. App funding. So there's a, we'll be talking about it later, but there's funding for developers. And it's easy to onboard privacy-oriented users. Everyone who is concerned with Facebook hacks and their private data will be looking at something like Blockstack to use the apps that are similar to standard apps, centralized, but and for the users, so the users own their identity, the users own their data, and they can share their data with the apps that they want to, and the users have only one ID for hundreds, for all the applications built on Blockstack. So that's my perception of what's the Blockstack and why we need it. And we need it because, well, if we care about privacy, people really don't at the moment, but I think at some point people will be paying more and more attention to that. Do you guys have any questions?
Yes.
Can you get the mic, please?
Can you go into a little bit more details? Like you said that comparing to Facebook, you don't have to worry about authentication, right? When you create a ID and you're saying that it stores on the blockchain, so but still this is the blockchain of the Blockstack, right?
Yes, so the ID will be on the Stacks blockchain.
It won't be?
It will be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe I can ask you, maybe it's clarified. So what's the relationship between Bitcoin blockchain and the Stacks blockchain?
Right, so previously, all the IDs registered are registered on the Bitcoin blockchain. But we found that there's a lot of limitations in terms of speed and the really high Bitcoin transaction fees. So having the Stacks blockchain really opens up the ability for us to build more on top of this Blockstack stack. So right now, when you create an ID, it will be registered on the Stacks blockchain.
So if I give permission for another app to either give the privilege them to access my account or revoke, right? Everything is stored on the Blockstack's blockchain.
No. So Gaia Storage uses existing cloud storage solutions for storage. The only things that are stored on the blockchain itself is your identity and certain smart contracts. So we're basically anchoring the data that's stored in, say, AWS or Google Cloud to your name on the blockchain. Right? So there are ways for us to use the blockchain to prove that you wrote this data and you own this data. And it's encrypted using your private key.
Like a reference table connecting your identity to the storage that you reference where your data is?
Yes, yes.
Similar to BitTorrent.
Similar, but it's a fully decentralized system.
So who can run a node on the Blockstack blockchain?
So right now, anybody can run the node. The code is on GitHub. You just need to clone it and start running.
So is it the proof of work?
So it's a combination of proof of work and proof of burn. So in the beginning, proof of burn will be the majority of mining on the Stacks blockchain. But as more and more people join the network, we can move towards proof of work and reduce the amount of proof of burn on the Stacks blockchain.
So in order for me to become a node, what do I do? Yeah. For proof of burn, I assume I need to buy Stacks token.
So proof of burn, you're burning Bitcoin to receive Stacks tokens. So you would have to,
Burning Bitcoin?
yes.
Out of 21 million.
Yes, but the reward that you receive will be based on how many other people are mining and the price of Stacks tokens. Right? So basically, the market forces will determine how much Bitcoin you need to burn in order to receive Stacks.
Do you have any idea how much Bitcoin you need to burn right now?
I don't. Sorry. So mining hasn't started yet, so I'm not able to give.
Do you know
sorry.
when?
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
Okay. So, like you said that you have you provide SDK for Android and iOS, right? And you have similar for web. You have similar JavaScript. Is it kind of a library which developers use to interact with the Blockstack's blockchain?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, apart from interaction, like for smart contract, do you have any similar programming language like Solidity, or if I have a Solidity code already developed, I can reuse the code?
No, you won't be able to use Solidity. So we have our own smart contract language,
Okay.
which we call Clarity. So Clarity is a language based on Lisp. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Lisp. It's a older programming language, but it provides us with a lot more guarantees. So Clarity is interpreted, not compiled. So if you look at Solidity, one of the problems is that you write your code in Solidity, which almost like JavaScript, and then it compiles down to bytecode, and then that is uploaded onto the blockchain. So for people that's trying to audit this code, it's very hard to actually determine whether or not the compiled code is exactly what the original source code is. And you also run the risk of a bug in the compiler introducing a bug in your smart contract. And also the Clarity smart contract language is not Turing complete, which means there's no chance of re-entrancy attacks, which has happened before on the Ethereum blockchain.
Guys, more questions?
Anyone else?
Can you tell us a little bit about the company, introduction to the company, when it was formed, the size, backing, those kind of things?
Sure. So the company was started in 2013, I believe. I joined in 2017. In the beginning, the company was actually called One Name, which was trying to build a naming system on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. And quickly, we realized that there are certain limitations on the Bitcoin blockchain, and we decided to build our own blockchain. And that's where we are here. And instead of just building an identity system, we've decided to also build the storage system and an entire app ecosystem, and providing all sorts of tools for developers to build apps that protect your digital rights.
So you have 5 years of research and development before the initial rollout of any sort of product. There's no ICOs were run, and I think you guys have like huge investors.
Yes. So the lead investor is Union Square Ventures. There's Lux Capital, DCG. Also, actually, I can't talk about them, but. if you go to our website, you can see a full list of investors. Yeah, so the SEC approval is for the sale of Stacks tokens to non-accredited investors in the US. So most ICOs and projects have been doing this token sale thing without being compliant. One of the examples is Kik with the KIN token. They're currently being sued by the SEC for security fraud, I think. So, our stance is that the Stacks token is a utility token, but we want to be fully compliant, and that's why we registered with the SEC. And in my opinion, in the future, when the Blockstack ecosystem is sufficiently decentralized, it will be pretty obvious that to the SEC that this is a utility token and not a security.
Hi, I have two questions. So my first question, you mentioned about ecosystem. Can you elaborate a bit more on the ecosystem that connected respect to using the Blockstack? So my second question is that I'm a user, and if I'm having download this as an app, I believe, then how exactly it's gonna play in my computer? My understanding is that I will keep my data, my own personal data. It means that every time when I go on, do some Google search or some of the website, all the cookies would not be able to follow me, or how exactly work? In a more plain language, because I'm not a developer. Thanks.
Okay. So the first question, what is this Blockstack ecosystem? So the ecosystem we're building includes tools for developers to build apps that protect users' digital rights and make it so that the apps themselves make it impossible for them to leak your data, steal your data, or censor you, all kinds of stuff. So the ecosystem also includes the apps that already exist today that are built using Blockstack. If you want to take a look, you can go to app.co. And then your second question was about how, as a user, how it works for you, right? So as a user, instead of using apps like Facebook, Instagram, Google Docs, there are alternatives to those things built on Blockstack using the Blockstack technology to guarantee your data is secured and respect your digital rights.
Hey, thanks everyone for being here. Sorry I couldn't show my face. Apparently I don't have enough bandwidth, but I flew into San Francisco today and had to find a cafe to kind of do this from. So apologies for the noise in the background. My name is Patrick Stanley. I'm the head of growth at Blockstack, and I'm going to talk about app mining for a few minutes. So what app mining is essentially it's a game that accelerates the creation of apps. So in traditional mining, you'd add computation and I guess in effect security to a network like Bitcoin, for example, in order to add value and then get paid. In the Blockstack ecosystem, I think Ken went over one form of mining. The other sort of layer 2 quote unquote mining that we do here is app mining. And so what happens is each month applications register for app mining, and existing ones continue to compete in it, and they're all stacked rank in a universal ranking, dependent on our app reviewers essentially. So every month people get paid out. So you can see in the app mining rank, number 1 is Dmail, and their payout, I think the numbers are a little like $1 off, but their payout is $20,000. They immediately became the number 1 ranked app in this mechanism, and are starting to take on a lot of money during the pilot phase, which we are currently sort of exiting. And you can see Graphite number 3 had earned $12,000 in the last month, but lifetime they've earned over $100,000. So pretty great. And you can see on the bottom left side of the slide, you'll see kind of the growth in apps. In May and June, we really accelerated the growth in apps. We're closing in on 130 registered apps app mining. So I need to update this slide. So apologies in advance. And the rate at which apps are growing is accelerating. So you might ask, like, okay, how does this actually work? And what does the future of this look like? So right now we have a handful of app reviewers that have their own specialized sort of way of ranking apps. So the first one is Product Hunt. And what they do is they rank you based on your product launch and the community upvotes and activity from that. The second one is Try My UI. It's similar to usertesting.com, but in this case, every app gets 10 videos of users around the world who have some familiarity with like the concept of what your app's trying to do, and they give you feedback, and they essentially assess it on different dimensions of usability. The third app reviewer is Awario, and essentially it ranks apps based on how much they're being talked about on social media and in the news. And for the time being, we do our best job to prevent sort of gaming in this one that you would expect to occur, and it's been working pretty well. And the fourth one is New Internet Labs. So this app reviewer ranks based on to what extent folks are using Blockstack tools, and in essence, the more Blockstack tools you use, the more likely you are to create sort of the more likely you are to sort of protect people's fundamental digital rights. That's like, use the whole Blockstack stack, you're getting extremely close to creating a solution for people that has like sort of unbreakable fundamental digital rights. So like the right to own your own ID, the right to own your own data, the right to communicate to your friends freely without any third parties kind of looking over it. And so you'll notice the payout for this month is $200,000. So half that is in Bitcoin currently, the other half is in Stacks, the native token for Blockstack. The payouts are going to go up to $500,000 in November, $750,000 I believe in February, and then in May they'll go up to $1 million per month, and that'll be all on Stacks tokens. And one comment I'd make is the whole app mining sort of game was developed in part with the Blockstack community, Blockstack PBC, as well as game theorists from NYU and Princeton. And I think when we first started out, we had a white paper. I think it's like 13 pages, and it's pretty easy reading. It's pretty easy reading, but if you enjoy game theory or you enjoy just mechanism design, it's a fun read. I think we've evolved very much from that initial white paper. Sorry, excuse the noise in the background. I think we've evolved a lot from that initial white paper to where we are today. And our developer satisfaction score has doubled, I think, from, I believe it's like around 33% to 63% in terms of folks who would be very disappointed, not just disappointed, if app mining got taken away from them. So we're improving the process always. And so far, it's been directionally very accurate in terms of ranking apps, and has been like a really good sort of spring of growth. So you'll see like over the 8-month run during the pilot where we're just paying out $100,000 a month in just Bitcoin, not Stacks, for the time being, we nearly 10x the number of apps in app mining. And we expect that growth to actually accelerate. I'll answer questions right at the end, which I'm pretty close to. And so developers are developing all sorts of apps. They're developing password managers, productivity tools. They're creating blogs where you own your own data, own your own identity, and you can find other people on the same blog, kind of like a decentralized medium. We also have people like, recently someone sent me an app that allows you to log in and write a message to the Bitcoin blockchain on as hosted by a Blockstream satellite. So I thought that was kind of cool. So people are really experimenting, and it's really attracting a lot of like the most intellectually curious people from all walks of life, whether it's like people who are into game theory or they're just into kind of building apps that can't be evil, quote unquote. I think the community is expanding really quickly around this. And so, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to bump it up to $1 million per month in May of next year. We're taking sort of a measured approach in how we introduce new app reviewers, how we sort of prevent bribery, gaming, collusion, things like that. We're just trying to stay very steady and build something kind of bigger than ourselves in this regard. So all in all, we're really excited. I think the ways to get started with app mining is you can take the 1 hour tutorial. All you need to know is JavaScript essentially, and you build your app, integrate Blockstack off, and that's the minimum kind of viable product for app mining, an app that uses Blockstack off. Now you can improve your ranking by adding more of the Blockstack technical stack, using the developer tools rather, to preserve users' fundamental digital rights, and also improve the presumably you improve the user experience, which would increase your ranking. So you can constantly compete, and you'll always be in it as long as your app is functional and people are using it essentially. We have some, and so that's just 3 steps. And so we have some big partnerships coming up. You'll see it in the news in mid-August, but we're going to have like a rapid influx of developers entering this game. And I kind of see the early folks of this game as like almost like the people who are, I mean, to some extent, it's kind of like the people who would have been like early participants in Bitcoin or something like that. They kind of see the potential. They want to get behind building apps that can't be evil. I use that as like a phrase, as a hashtag. There's varying degrees of evilness you could do in any regard. But I guess like Blockstack apps themselves, they kind of create a guarantee between the developer and the user that the developer is not going to take users' private data and use it for any wrongdoing or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of the whole thing. Are there any questions I can answer? And if you use the mic, I think it might be helpful, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to hear anything.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Sorry, you got it. I think you might need to move closer to the microphone that Ken is using.
Wherever you choose to store that raw transaction data, if that's lost or changed, is it gone?
I'm sorry.
All that data that you've been using in the app that's not stored on chain. If server crashes or you change something about the raw transaction data.
Okay. I think I can answer that for you, Patrick. So your personal data is not stored on chain.
I know.
Right. So
But what if it's gone? Wherever I store it, it's gone.
So there are solutions on wherever you choose to store it to back up that data. So most cloud storage solutions have some sort of backup system, and we're not. In the future, there might be a system on Gaia directly that allows you to store your data in multiple locations for redundancy.
That would be the solution.
Yeah. Any more questions?
I have a question. Can we go back to the slides where Patrick have stated like about a stable of income, or can you go back a couple slides?
Sure.
I think maybe slide 4 or 5. Slide 5, please. Number 5.
Sure.
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah. So I'm just curious how this number come up for 1 million in that sense, like, because we're talking about future. Just curious if you can elaborate about that.
Yeah, of course. I think there's a few things. First of all, app mining has kind of passed our kind of sniff test of its efficacy, and so we wanted to put more fuel into the system, and I think offering $1 million. First of all, we picked $1 million because it's a nice round number, and over a 12-month period, it fits within the regulatory framework that we've created. we intend to move past that and beyond that, kind of prior to those 12 months ending, and potentially even offer more sort of rewards and money per month should app mining continue to prove to be directionally successful. On the $1 million, I think Stacks token is being sold right now in a Reg A offering for 30 cents a token. So this is like, roughly 3 tokens and some change per dollar. And as I mentioned, this like falls under the regulatory framework of what we're able to give out. And right now we're manually sending these payments out, but there's a world where we shift over to automatic payments directly from the blockchain. If app mining is structured in a way where it's very hard to hack in a similar way that Bitcoin is very hard to hack. Like, you were handed over to your enemies, they still couldn't mess with it, for example. And so until we reach that point, we're going to manually be paying it out. But generally, just to add one more thing, generally we feel that giving out Stacks payments, like the native token of Blockstack, the people that are contributing the most to the app layer, is a generally good thing. And so we intend to just get better and better at it.
Can I ask another question? So as a user, I just want to know how the money involved in terms of user, the app developer, and your company, like how the money generated amount. Maybe you can give me a little bit more background on that, please.
So sure. So the Stacks tokens are generated along an issuance schedule, and the way they're generated is through the sort of type of mining that Ken was describing earlier. That's the main way they're generated. Prior to that, we are manually paying out Stacks tokens from effectively a designated treasury that was carved out under the regulation A+ issuance that was approved by the SEC. We're the first project approved by the SEC to do such a thing for a token. And so there is essentially a pot of money that's going directly to app developers that's carved out from that. And I mean, by the time the sale concludes, there will be thousands of stakeholders in the ecosystem who hold on to Stacks tokens. And my understanding is for the next 6 to 12 months before traditional mining gets turned on, pretty much the only way to get Stacks tokens, aside from purchasing them directly on an exchange, is to build apps and earn them through app mining.
Cool. Any more questions about app mining specifically?
Yeah, I have a question. What are the most popular apps, or what you see? Or maybe you can see what will be the most popular apps in the future.
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now, the most popular app, well, I think this month just closed. I don't have the final results for this month. But last month, let's play on this month, the most popular app, I believe, was Dmail, which is like it's kind of like an email that it doesn't use SMTP, but what it does is it allows you to send messages in a very familiar sort of email format, directly from Blockstack user to Blockstack user, without any third party in between, including the client software that you're using. So that's a team out of Egypt, and out of a region like that, it's especially sort of noteworthy, as they had Arab Spring and all that. So they ended up getting some press out of that. I think people like it. I think Graphite for a long time has been like one of the top apps. That's number 3 right now. They're a replacement for Google Docs. with all the kind of guarantees and security that Blockstack's architecture and sort of developer tool, like app infrastructure offers. So like, you own your own docs, send it to friends you know on the network. No one can take those docs away from you. No one can censor you, et cetera, et cetera. Patreon number 4 is a replacement for Patreon. One of the core principles it has is that you will never lose your followers. So like, Patreon can deplatform people. Should you guys, you all might have seen Sam Harris, a podcaster, leave Patreon preemptively because he wanted to avoid potentially being deplatformed from the first place and having to build his follower base from the ground up and have to restore all that revenue he had lost. And so Patreon is like a perfectly acceptable replacement for him, especially if he's doing a lot of his payments in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency. I think what we're going to end up seeing in the future is, especially with the launch of our smart contract language, is people developing more apps that involve smart contracts. So like decentralized exchanges, like stuff you may already be familiar with in the cryptocurrency space, centralized exchanges, stable coins, things like that. But I'm more excited in my take, like I'm more excited for apps that are built that use that kind of help support app mining itself. So like anything that helps people join and leave teams very fluidly while capturing the full amount of their value, amount of the value they contributed toward app mining for that time being, I think would be a great app to build. That way you can essentially ride the wave of all the developers that are rapidly joining app mining and provide a tool that is directly relevant for them and helping them compete against other folks to add value to the ecosystem. That last one is kind of something I'm sort of excited for. Yeah, sure. So I think the goal is really to pull in applications and create an environment, pull in applications that are going to add value to the Blockstack ecosystem and create an environment in which they're constantly improving. So like it's quality as much as quantity. Like if we only had 20 breakout apps that had millions of users, I think we'd be totally fine with that. And so that's a little perspective there. In terms of business models, that is a really great question. So like in the early days of the internet, I think a lot of people in the professional and sort of like just business world were very skeptical of building business models online. I think there's kind of an echo of that happening today regarding apps that don't collect user data. So you may have to throw out harvesting user data, selling it, etc., or advertising to users based on the user data out the window, or you create an opt-in experience where they know what they're getting into and they share certain data, right? In terms of like business model, I think traditional ones like pay per prescription, pay per subscription, still very viable. I think also app mining as a mechanism, kind of is built as a stand-in for the time in which people are experimenting with new business models they could build in this ecosystem. And I think it's kind of an essential kind of bootstrapping mechanism so that apps don't have to worry about raising VC to folks, the VC that might not totally get it or think it's too early for them, or have to resort to advertising, which kind of breaks the spirit of I think most developers would rather not have to advertise directly to their users. They'd rather just build beautiful products their users love and kind of do that all day. That's kind of long and short of it.
Yeah. So thank you, Patrick.
Thanks, y'all. I guess like one thing I want to say is like I really appreciate everyone showing up really appreciate everyone sort of listening to the message about Blockstack. And I would say like this time in history is a very special one. Like everyone in the room right now I feel like they have a similar ethos to the folks that were first attending the Homebrew Computing Club meetings in the late 70s. And these are folks who like have beliefs that things should be different, that users should be back in control, and we should center a whole experience around the individual user and add value there. And whether you guys are just looking at this stuff for the first time or you're really well versed, everyone in this room is essentially a pioneer in the space. And your sort of impact in the space, should you choose to add value to it, especially with Blockstack, would be well felt and like would go a long way, especially in these early days. So I just appreciate everyone should give themselves a pat on the back for showing up in the first place and carrying it up to listen to kind of what our message is and what we're trying to spread here. So thanks a lot.
Patrick, isn't it similar to the internet in like 90s, where there were no centralized services and everyone had to run applications on their local machine?
Absolutely. I would say it's like a combination of the early personal computing and internet in the 90s. You still get that personal computing component where it's like you're taking power away from the mainframe and bringing it to the individual. And you're just seeing that now with like cloud. Like cloud is the new mainframe. It's like IBM to like Mac essentially is the Google Facebook cloud to the decentralized era, the decentralized cloud, where people have fundamental digital rights that are unbreakable.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Patrick.
Thanks so much, y'all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
So you can go to browser.blockstack.org to use the hosted version of the browser, or you can go to blockstack.org/install to get the version that you install on your desktop. And when you launch it, you can very quickly create a new ID, choose your username. So I'm just gonna use,
And by the way, guys, you can do it on your phones. It works the same way.
yes, you can go to browser.blockstack.org on your phone, and you can do the same thing. You set a password to encrypt your seed phrase. So we're just going to enter something. And here's just generating a cryptographic seed phrase. You can use any email you want. What this email does is it'll send you an encrypted recovery phrase to your email, so that if you ever forget your recovery phrase, you can go to your email, use your password to unlock it. And you're done. And let's say you want to sign in to an app. This one is one of my personal favorites. It's a decentralized blogging app. So you click sign in, logging with Blockstack. Okay, looks like it's not working. And try a different one. Okay, I think it's because, oh, there we go. Yep, and you choose the ID you just created. And you're signed in. This is Graphite, which is like a Google Doc replacement. You can start a new document. do whatever you want, and it'll be saved in your own cloud storage, of course. And that's it. So if you sign up for an ID, you can get a t-shirt. Thank you.